With pre-production ramping up for Matt Reeves' next installment in his epic crime saga, we are finally getting our first juicy details. We now know that Scarlett Johansson is playing the film's femme fatale character, possibly serving as both love interest and villain, and we've gotten a plausible rumor that Jeremiah Arkham is a major antagonist in the story. So what can we piece together with this information? Well, nothing definitively, but since Matt Reeves has said that all the seeds for where this movie's plot goes are laid in the first movie, and since he said it's diving deeper into the corruption exposed in the first one, I feel I've come up with a very likely plot for the Batman Part 2, using both what we know from the first movie, what we know is coming next, and just some things the fans really want to see. But before I get into it, you should know that I'm just thinking out loud here, so if you like my brain vomit, you know where the like and subscribe buttons are. I can't believe it's been well over a year already since my last video speculating on the future of the epic crime saga as a whole, and it feels so great to finally have new information to go off of so I can expand my theories. However, not much has changed since then, so I'd still recommend you check out that video next, as it goes far bigger than just the plot of this sequel. Now with all of that said, without any further ado, let's dive into what I imagine could be the next chapter of Matt Reeves' Batman epic crime saga. First of all, whereas the first film was entirely focused on the Bat, what makes him tick, and what he represents, this film is about the other mask, exploring the purpose of his public image and the importance to him of his family legacy, and asking how he can do the most good. In this film, there is a plot to smear Bruce Wayne, tearing his life apart using blackmail, and possibly even framing him for some crime. Several people are a part of this plot with their own motivations and knowledge. This all takes place in the aftermath of the Riddler smear campaign, so the public already kinda hates the Waynes and the Arkhams, which drives Bruce's attempts to both rebuild his family's legacy through philanthropic work and expose the truth about both families. Now with the central themes and basic premise established, let's go through the film's villains to uncover their plot. Vicky Vale is a reporter who starts investigating Bruce as he begins stepping into the public eye, getting close to him and getting information about him that can be used against him, potentially even learning he is Batman at some point after starting a relationship with him. The story could go a few different directions with her character. On the one hand, her intentions may be the most honest here, as she is simply trying to expose the truth about the seemingly corrupt Wayne family. However, and this is the angle I'm going with, she may also secretly be part of the Arkham family, with Vicky Vale being the name she goes by professionally, but her real name being Victoria Arkham, like in the Telltale games. If this is the case, she obviously has ulterior motives to her investigation, which I'll get to later. She may also somehow be a version of Andrea Beaumont in order to make her serve as a version of the Phantasm, with that name being another she has gone by at some point in the past, though perhaps Andrea is just a separate character somehow tied to the plot. Maybe someone they threaten in their manipulations of Bruce. I don't know how this would really fit in, I just think some kind of nod to Mask of the Phantasm would be nice. But anyway, let's move on to the film's next villain. The son of Edward Elliot, the reporter killed by Carmine Falcone, seemingly to protect the Waynes and Arkham secrets, Thomas is out to avenge his father by tearing Bruce Wayne's life apart. He is the mysterious figure tormenting him from the shadows, taking inspiration from the Riddler and using the moniker of Hush. He uses Vicky's information on Bruce to blackmail, manipulate, and ultimately frame him for something in order to make him out to the public as a mentally unstable and dangerous person who has been deliberately kept out of the public eye and should be locked in Arkham. In fact, I imagine he even frames Bruce for murdering Vicky Vale, leading Bruce to think that Thomas killed her once he was done with her to make sure she couldn't expose him, while making everyone think Bruce killed her to keep her from exposing him. Of course, Bruce believes, and maybe Vicky even told him before her apparent death, that Thomas manipulated her into getting close to him to expose him without her initially knowing what Thomas was really up to. But then, late into the film, Bruce learns Vicky's true identity, and that her death was faked, and it turns out she was the one using Thomas all along. To be clear, this wouldn't be a Dark Knight Rises kind of twist, because it wouldn't reduce Hush as a villain at all, since he would still have his own personal motivations, and he was very much the one directly tormenting Bruce. This reveal would just add another, deeper layer to what's going on. In addition to being framed, Bruce's secret identity is heavily threatened in this film, perhaps with Vicky learning it before her fake death, and Hush then revealing his knowledge of it and blackmailing him with the information. In fact, the plot focuses heavily on Bruce's identity, pushing him to the brink of giving it up. He spends much of the movie desperately trying to cover it up, but he ultimately wonders whether he can even do any good as Batman when he could be focusing on his philanthropic efforts. He does, of course, ultimately continue to be Batman, but by the end, he has struck a balance between his two personas and halves of his mission. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. To return to our villains, you're probably wondering why Vicky would do all this. So to answer that, let's shift our attention to another prominent character. The mastermind pulling the strings of this whole plot, or at least the shadowy figure influencing everything from the background, Jeremiah is the current head of the Arkham family and a leading member of the Court of Owls, though that may only be hinted at here. He was involved in the killing of Martha's parents, his own brother and sister-in-law, which was framed to look like a murder-suicide, and he had Martha thrown in the family asylum, as the city's elite do with people who know too much, just like Carmine Falcone did with Sophia. This was part of some kind of power play or even cover-up, as perhaps her parents had threatened to expose the court, and Jeremiah saw the chance to take them out and rise within both his family and the court. How directly he is involved in Vicky and Thomas's plot against Bruce, I'm not sure, as Vicky may be acting largely independently, but to some degree, Jeremiah is the one manipulating the events of the current plot in an effort to shift public attention onto Bruce and away from himself and his family, reinforcing the narrative of mental illness in the family, passed down from Martha's mother to Bruce, and thus strengthening his own cover-up. Now, I don't want Jeremiah to have no role in the story until everything is revealed at the end. I imagine that from the beginning of the story, Bruce is investigating his own company and trying to take back control of it. He would soon discover the extreme nepotism going on inside it, with basically its entire board being somehow connected to the Arkham family, including Philip Kane, the CEO, who is married to Jeremiah's sister or daughter, something, and is clearly his biggest pawn. So from early in the film, Bruce feels Jeremiah is corrupt and has way too much power in his company. This would add a whole other layer to Jeremiah's motivations as he sees Bruce as a threat to his power. Oh, and in case you're wondering how this would all have worked with the Falcones controlling the renewal fund, I imagine Falcone was the one really in charge of the company before his death, and it was by cozying up to him that Jeremiah got so much of his family into positions of power running things in the company underneath him. Not that Falcone cared what they did with the company as long as he was the one getting paid. However, since Falcone's death, Arkham has been trying to seize control of the corporate and legal side of the city's power structure, just as Oz has been taking over its underworld. So how would all of this end? Well, the specifics could go a variety of ways, but, of course, Bruce gets his name cleared and exposes Jeremiah. Vicky may have a change of heart and die saving him from Hush, who probably dies as well and takes his knowledge of Bruce's identity to the grave. And Bruce takes charge of Wayne Enterprises and recommits to fighting crime as Batman, while fighting corruption and poverty as Bruce Wayne. In fact, the movie could end with a Harvey Dent tease, as Bruce is invited to use his newfound influence to support Dent's anti-corruption campaign. And of course, everything he learned about the Arkhams revealed the existence of a corrupt secret society among Gotham's elite, which he sets out to uncover, all of this laying the foundation for an epic sequel. But what do you think? What do you hope to most see in the Batman Part 2? What do you think is the most likely plot Matt Reeves has in store? What are your favorite and least favorite aspects of my pitch? Is there anything you would add or take away? As always, I'm just here to kick off the conversation, so please, let me know the answers to these questions and any other thoughts you may have down in the comments below. Until next time, just keep thinking out loud.